sit here before me, listening in silence. I know that each of you wears a mask. You may not be conscious of it, but it rests gently or perhaps heavily upon your face, as though it were fused to your very skin. The mask, which I have called the persona, is not a lie in the shallow sense. It is a necessity of social life, a costume we wear to meet the demands of the world. Without it, we would be like actors stepping upon a stage naked, unprepared and vulnerable to the cruel eyes of the audience. And yet, this mask, while protective, is also perilous. For in time, you may forget that it is only a mask, and you begin to confuse it with your true essence. Then you are no longer the one who wears the mask, you become the mask itself. And the living soul behind it is silenced, suffocated, and forgotten. The persona arises from necessity. Society is a vast, impersonal machine, demanding conformity, demanding roles, demanding that you fit yourself into its mold, to work among others, to be acceptable to them. You develop a certain phase, perhaps the diligent worker, the pious believer, the gentle mother, the strong father, the clever scholar, or the obedient child. You present this to the world because the world cannot tolerate the chaos of your total being. If you were to reveal all that dwells within the shadows, the instincts, the gods and demons, you would be rejected. So the mask allows you entry, it buys your participation. It permits you to be part of the great theater of life. For this reason, I have never told anyone to simply discard their persona. To do so would be madness, a dangerous regression into the wild, unconscious. The mask is not evil. It is a servant, a bridge. But when the servant becomes master, then begins a tragedy. Consider, for example, the man who believes himself entirely, the professor, the businessman, the doctor. His whole identity is wrapped around the title on his office door. He speaks not as a man with flesh and longing and secret dreams, but as a voice of authority, as a performer, endlessly rehearsing the same lines. Or think of the woman who has become only the caring mother, suppressing her sexuality, her creativity, her wildness, until she has no existence. Apart from the children she raises, when the children depart, she finds herself hollow, bereft, lost. In both cases, the persona has devoured the soul. And when such a persona crumbles, as it inevitably must, then the truth breaks through like a flood bursting its dam, and the individual is thrown into crisis. It is this crisis, painful though it is, that brings you closer to authenticity. To lose the persona is terrifying because it is to lose the face you have shown to the world, the face you have clung to as your anchor. Without it, you are cast into the abyss of uncertainty. Who are you? If not the scholar, the caretaker, the warrior, the artist? What remains when the carefully painted mask is torn away? This abyss is the entryway to the deeper mystery of the self, most resisted, clinging desperately to fragments of the mask, patching the cracks, insisting to themselves and others that nothing has changed. But for those who dare to look into the darkness, who endure the shattering of the persona, something extraordinary occurs. They encounter the hidden reality of their being. Dreams often betray the cracks in the mask before the conscious mind can acknowledge them. I recall many patients whose dreams revealed grotesque parodies of their personas. A rigidly respectable man dreamt of himself in clownish attire, humiliated before an audience. A woman who prided herself on her perfect appearance saw in her dreams a face melting like wax. These images are the psyche's rebellion, the unconscious mocking the superficial self-image, demanding that the mask be recognized for what it is, a flimsy covering, not the essence of the soul. Dreams frighten, but they also guide, for they announce the coming death of the false identity and the rebirth of something truer. What waits beyond the persona is not immediately peace. At first, it is confusion, even chaos. For when the mask crumbles, the shadow steps forward. The shadow is everything you repressed in order to maintain your social face. The anger you denied to be polite, the lust you hid to appear virtuous, the greed you suppressed to seem generous, the fear you buried to look courageous. When the mask breaks, the shadow emerges like a long exiled prisoner, demanding recognition. This is why the collapse of the persona so often leads to midlife crisis, to despair, to reckless behavior, to the temptation of affairs, addictions, or sudden destructive choices. The individual, stripped of the protective mask, suddenly meets their own unacknowledged darkness and does not know what to do with it. And yet, it is only by confronting this shadow that the journey to authenticity can continue. I have seen men in the prime of their careers, admired by all, suddenly fall into depression because the mask of competence no longer holds. They begin to ask, is this all there is? Have I lived my own life, or merely the life demanded by others? These questions are not neuroses to be extinguished. They are the first stirrings of individuation, the soul knocking upon the walls of the prison. Similarly, women who have given themselves entirely to roles assigned by society, wife, mother, dutiful daughter, find themselves tormented by strange dreams and inexplicable desires once those roles lose their centrality. They may think they are ill or sinful or broken, but what is happening is the stirring of the deeper self, the voice of the inner archetype, insisting on life beyond the mask. You must understand that the self is not the ego. The ego is the center of consciousness, the I that you know and speak with, but the self is larger. It is the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious, shadow and light, human and divine. When the persona crumbles, you are given, often unwillingly, a glimpse of the self. It may come in a dream where you encounter a figure of profound authority, a wise old man or woman, a child of radiant light, or a godlike being, or it may appear as a terrifying force, a monster, a chaos that threatens to dissolve your fragile ego. These are symbols of the self, which holds within it the paradox of wholeness. The self is both your greatest fear and your deepest salvation, because it calls you to be not the mask, not even the ego, but something more vast, more ancient, more complete. When the persona breaks, people often experience loneliness. They feel estranged from friends and family who still identify with their own masks. They no longer fit the conversations, the rituals, the assumptions of their social group. This loneliness is the price of awakening. To see through the mask is to see through the common illusions that bind society together. But do not despair in this isolation. For what emerges in this void is a new relationship, not with the crowd, but with the soul. The soul becomes the companion, the guide, the beloved. And this intimacy with the inner life brings a richness no persona could ever provide. Imagine a dream where you walk into a great hall and all the masks you have ever worn are hung upon the walls, the mask of the child eager to please, the mask of the ambitious worker, the mask of the lover, the mask of the pious believer. One by one, you touch them, remembering the times they served you. But then you notice at the far end of the hall a mirror. When you look into it, you see not a mask but a shifting face, a face that contains all possibilities, as though the gods themselves are gazing back at you. This is the self. It is not fixed, not bound to a single role. It is the eternal reality beneath the play of masks. To reach this vision, however, you must first endure the shattering, the stripping away, the painful unmasking. The world will not thank you for removing the mask. Indeed, the world will resist it, because your authenticity threatens its fragile equilibrium. The persona is what allows society to function smoothly, with everyone playing their part in the great game. When you step beyond it, you reveal the game for what it is, and others may recoil. They may call you mad, eccentric, rebellious, dangerous. But history shows us that those who dare to live beyond the mask prophets, poets, mystics, and visionaries were always treated as outcasts. Yet it is through them that new life entered the world. Authenticity is never cheap. It always comes with sacrifice, but it is also the path of the soul. I tell you, and then do not fear the crumbling of the mask. Do not cling to it. When it begins to break, instead, watch closely. Listen to your dreams. Attend to the stirrings of the unconscious. You will be frightened. Yes, for the shadow will rise and the abyss will open. But beyond that terror lies the treasure, the gold hidden in the darkness. The alchemists called it the lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone, which transforms base matter into gold. In psychological terms, it is the integration of the self, the union of opposites, the wholeness that heals the divided soul. To reach it, you must descend into the underworld of your being, stripping away the false until only the eternal remains. And what is this eternal? It is not the mask, nor the ego, nor even the roles you play with others. It is the living mystery of who you are when all disguises fall away. It is the image of God within you, the imago Dei, shining through the fragments of your personality. It is what you were before you learned to please, before you learned to hide, before you bent yourself to the demands of the crowd. It is your true face, the one not made of flesh, but of spirit. To meet this self is to come home, to return to the ground of being from which you came. When the shadow rises in the wake of the persona's collapse, It does not come politely. It does not knock upon the door of your consciousness asking for permission to enter. It storms in, it erupts, it intrudes in ways that frighten you. You might find yourself saying things you did not intend, feeling sudden surges of rage, jealousy, or lust that shock you. Dreams may turn darker, filled with chases, battles, grotesque faces, or unfamiliar landscapes. All of this is the voice of what you rejected. What you feared would ruin your carefully curated image, and yet this confrontation is indispensable. For only by encountering your shadow can you become whole. You cannot banish it. You cannot annihilate it without also annihilating a part of yourself. You must integrate it, which means to acknowledge it, to dialogue with it, to learn what it has to teach you. Integration is never comfortable. Imagine standing before a mirror that does not flatter you, that shows every imperfection, every scar, every hidden wrinkle of your soul. The shadow is such a mirror. To accept what you see is painful, but to deny it is fatal to your inner growth. I have often said that enlightenment is not about imagining figures of light, but about making the darkness conscious. This is the real work. To carry your shadow consciously is to bear a burden, but also to claim a source of power. For what you repress does not vanish. It festers in the dark, influencing you from behind the veil. But when brought into awareness, it becomes energy available for creation, for authenticity, for transformation. The archetypes are the language of this inner transformation. They are the primordial patterns through which the self reveals itself. When the persona breaks and the shadow comes forth, you may begin to encounter archetypal figures in your inner life. The anima or animus appears, that inner counterpart of the opposite sex, confronting you with aspects of your soul you have long denied. The trickster may visit, mocking your seriousness, destabilizing your certainties, forcing you to laugh at your pretensions. The wise old man or the great mother may step forth in dreams or visions, offering guidance, but also demanding humility. These figures are not fantasies in the trivial sense. They are the deep grammar of the psyche, the ancient gods still speaking in the theater of your soul. One of the most common experiences following the collapse of the persona is the confrontation with the anima or animus. A man who has lived only through his public role suddenly finds himself haunted by moods, by fantasies, by overwhelming emotions he cannot control. This is the anima calling him inward, into the depths he has avoided. A woman who has repressed her assertive, rational or spiritual side may suddenly be seized by visions of a powerful male figure in her dreams. This is the animus demanding recognition. These encounters, though unsettling, are invitations to wholeness. They challenge you to go beyond the one-sidedness of the persona and to embrace the fullness of your nature. The collapse of the mask often triggers symbolic dreams of death and rebirth. Patients have told me of coffins, funerals, or of being buried alive, only to find later that these images heralded the death of an old identity and the emergence of something new. Others dream of descending into caves, of traveling through dark forests, of meeting beasts or dragons. These are archetypal journeys into the underworld, the place where the ego must surrender its illusions in order to find the hidden treasure. The dragon guards the gold not to keep you from it, but to ensure you are ready to claim it. If you confront the dragon, your fear, your shadow, you gain access to the treasure, the living self within. Society does not encourage such journeys. It prefers you to wear your mask, to keep the play going smoothly, but the psyche has its own demands, and it rebels when the mask becomes a prison. The so-called neuroses that afflict so many in midlife are often not sicknesses but signals. They are the soul insisting that you must descend, that you must confront the deeper layers of your being. If you ignore these signals, if you suppress them with endless distractions, addictions, or the blind pursuit of success, the rebellion will grow more violent. But if you listen, if you dare to descend, then the crisis becomes initiation. Consider the myth of Persephone, abducted into the underworld. On the surface, it is a tale of violence and loss, but psychologically, it is an image of descent into the unconscious. Persephone, once a maiden in the light of her mother Demeter, must journey into the depths, into the land of shadow. She becomes queen of the underworld, and only by integrating this dark realm does she return transformed. Each of us must undergo a similar journey. When the persona breaks, you are abducted by your own unconscious, drawn into depths you did not choose. But if you endure, if you integrate, you return, not as the same, but as one transformed, crowned with the authority of authenticity. The self is always the goal, though it appears in countless guises. Sometimes it manifests as a divine child, symbol of the new life that emerges after the collapse. Sometimes it appears as a mandala in dreams or visions, a circle or cross, images of wholeness that the psyche spontaneously produces. These symbols reassure you that the journey is not meaningless, that there is an order hidden within the apparent chaos. The mandala says you are moving toward the center, toward integration. Even when you feel lost, the unconscious is guiding you, weaving its patterns toward completion. The path of individuation is not linear. It moves in waves, in spirals, in sudden breakthroughs and painful regressions. One moment you glimpse the light of the self. The next you are plunged back into shadow. This oscillation is natural. It is the psyche's way of preventing inflation, of keeping you from identifying too quickly with the godlike images of the self. For there is always the danger of inflation, of believing you are divine, omniscient, above all others. This too is a mask, a subtler one, more dangerous than the persona of ordinary life. True individuation requires humility, the recognition that the self is vast and mysterious, and that the ego can only bow before it. You are not the self, but you belong to it, as a wave belongs to the ocean. In the collapse of the persona, you also confront the question of meaning. For when the mask falls, many discover that their life, as they have lived it, was not truly theirs. They pursue the expectations of parents, the demands of society, the scripts handed down by culture. Now, stripped of those scripts, they ask, why do I live? What is the purpose? This existential void can feel unbearable, but it is also the fertile ground from which true meaning can grow. Meaning is not handed to you from without. It emerges when you align with the self, when you listen to the voice of the soul. It may come through creativity, through service, through love, through the pursuit of truth, but it must be yours, not merely borrowed from the collective. I remember a patient, a successful lawyer, who came to me in despair after his career collapsed. He had lost his reputation, his role, his mask. At first, he was consumed by shame, by the sense of failure. But through dreams and inner work, he discovered a passion for painting that had been buried since childhood. He began to paint not for recognition, but for the sheer joy of expression. In time, he found a new sense of self, not defined by society's applause, but by the authentic voice of his own soul. This is the gift hidden in the ruin of the persona. When one life ends, another begins. The alchemists spoke of the nigredo, the blackening, the stage of darkness and decomposition that precedes transformation. The collapse of the mask is such a nigredo, you feel as though everything is falling apart, that life is meaningless, that you are dissolving into nothingness. But in alchemy, this darkness is the necessary beginning, the fertile soil from which the gold will emerge. Out of the decay comes rebirth. Out of the ashes rises the phoenix. So too in the psyche, when the mask crumbles and the shadow rises, when you feel lost in the underworld, you are in the very process that leads to wholeness. Therefore, I tell you, do not resist the collapse. Do not cling to the fragments of the mask as if they could save you. They cannot. Instead, dare to let them fall. Dare to endure the darkness. Dare to meet your shadow, your anima, your archetypes. Dare to listen to your dreams, for they are the secret script of your soul's unfolding. If you persist, if you remain faithful to the inner process, you will find that beyond the mask, beyond the shadow, beyond even the abyss of meaninglessness, there is something indestructible, something eternal. This is the self, the divine core of your being. It waits for you, not in the safety of the mask, but in the peril of authenticity. When you begin to live in dialogue with the unconscious, you will discover that it is not silent. It speaks in symbols, in moods, in synchronicities that shake the very fabric of your rational mind. You will notice that the world itself begins to shimmer with meaning, that events which once seemed random now arrange themselves into patterns as though an unseen hand were guiding you. This is the numinous quality of the self revealing itself through outer and inner life alike. It is bewildering at first, for you no longer know what is just coincidence and what is destiny. The veil between the inner and outer loosens, and you realize that psyche and world are not strangers, but two reflections of the same mystery. At this stage, the greatest danger is inflation. Having glimpsed the vastness of the self, you may believe you are identical with it. The ego, drunk on divine images, proclaims itself prophet, savior, God. This is a subtle mask, more perilous than the persona of ordinary life, because it clothes itself in transcendence. Many who fall into this trap become possessed by archetypal energies. Speaking with authority, they do not truly possess, convinced of their own infallibility. History is full of such figures, leaders, gurus, demagogues, who mistook the voice of the archetype for their personal will, and in so doing wreaked havoc on themselves and others. You must remember, the self is not your possession. It is larger than you, older than you, greater than you. You are its vessel, not its master. Therefore, humility is essential. To stand before the self is to stand before a mystery, as Moses before the burning bush. You remove your shoes, for the ground is holy. You do not claim divinity for yourself, but you recognize that the divine lives within you as an image, a spark, a mystery to which you belong. This humility protects you from inflation and allows true individuation to unfold. Individuation is not becoming a god, it is becoming fully human, a human who has integrated shadow and light, instinct and spirit, conscious and unconscious. It is to live in harmony with the whole of your being, not in denial of any part of it. Dreams at this stage often bring images of integration circles, mandalas, sacred geometry, unions of opposites. One patient dreamt of a sun and moon merging into one radiant sphere. Another saw herself weaving a tapestry of many colors, each thread representing a different part of her life, now finally woven into one design. These are not idle fantasies. They are psychic events, expressions of the self's movement toward wholeness. They are messages that you are being drawn toward the center, even if your conscious life still stumbles in confusion. The mask that once protected you, that once deceived you, has fallen. You have met the shadow, endured the underworld, confronted the dragon, and glimpsed the treasure, but the journey is not yet complete. For now you must return. You must bring back what you have found into the world of men and women, into the daily life of work, of relationship, of responsibility. Individuation is not escape, it is incarnation. To discover your true self is not to flee the world, but to live in it more authentically, more creatively, more compassionately. You bring the treasure of the inner world back into the outer, enriching not only your life, but the lives of others. And here another paradox arises. You cannot return to the old mask. It no longer fits. To try to wear it again is to suffocate. Yet you must still play roles in society. You must still wear a face. The difference is that now you wear the mask consciously, knowing it is a mask, knowing it is not the totality of your being. You play your part, but you are not possessed by it. You can remove it when necessary. You can laugh at it. You can change it. The mask has become once more what it should always have been, a servant, not the master. This is true freedom, not the absence of masks, but the conscious use of them in service of the deeper self. The mystical traditions of every culture have known this truth. The shamans of Siberia, the yogis of India, the mystics of Christianity and Islam all speak of the death of the false self and the rebirth into a deeper reality. They describe visions of light, encounters with divine figures, journeys through underworlds. These are archetypal patterns, eternal as the human soul itself. My psychology is but a modern language for these ancient truths. The collapse of the persona, the confrontation with the shadow, the encounter with archetypes. The integration into the self, this is the timeless path of transformation, dressed now in the garments of depth psychology, but as old as humanity itself. To walk this path is to know suffering. There is no gentle way to shed the skin of illusion, but suffering, when embraced with consciousness, becomes initiation. It breaks the ego's arrogance. It humbles the mind. It opens the heart. Suffering burns away the dross, leaving only what is essential. Without suffering, no mask would ever crumble, for we would cling forever to the comfortable illusion, but through suffering, the illusion cracks, and through the crack, light enters. Let me tell you of a dream that reveals this truth. A woman dreamt she was in a grand theater, performing her role upon the stage. The audience applauded, but she felt empty, for the script was not hers. Suddenly, the theater collapsed, the stage crumbling beneath her feet. She fell into darkness, terrified, but as her eyes adjusted, she saw stars shining in the abyss, constellations forming a vast mandala. She realized she was not falling into nothingness, but into the cosmos itself. When she awoke, she was filled with awe, no longer afraid of losing her social role. This is a mystery of the mask's collapse. What seems like ruin is often revelation. What seems like death is often rebirth. You, too, must allow your theater to collapse when the time comes. You must dare to fall, trusting that beneath the rubble lies the cosmos, that beneath the mask lies the self. Do not rush to rebuild the old stage. Do not cling to the broken script. Trust the process of the soul, for the self is wiser than your conscious plans, and it will lead you where you need to go, if only you will listen. In this listening, you will find a new orientation. Life will no longer be about playing roles to please others, but about living from the center of your being. This does not mean selfishness. On the contrary, it deepens your capacity for love. For when you live from the self, you no longer love others for how they fit your mask, but for who they truly are. You see beyond their masks. You recognize their shadows. You honor their wholeness. This is true compassion, not the pity of the superior for the inferior, but the recognition of the shared mystery of the self in each soul. Such compassion transforms relationships, for it is rooted not in illusion, but in truth. To live from the self is also to live creatively. The energy that once went into maintaining the mask is freed, and it pours into creation, into art, into thought, into building, into acts of love. You become a participant in the great work of life, a co-creator with a mystery. Creativity is not limited to artists. It belongs to all who live authentically. To raise a child with awareness, to heal a wound, to teach with wisdom, to speak truth in love. These are all acts of creation. The self is inexhaustibly creative, for it is the wellspring of life itself. But beware again of pride. Creativity, like individuation, is not for your ego's glory. It is the expression of the self through you. You are the instrument, not the composer. Your task is to keep the instrument tuned, to let the music flow, to remain faithful to the process. If you mistake the music for your own possession, you will fall into inflation once more. The true creator knows they are servant to the mystery, not its master. In this way, life beyond the mask is both more difficult and more beautiful. It demands courage, for you must face darkness, shadow, suffering, but it offers joy, for you live no longer as a fragment, but as a whole. You live in dialogue with the soul, guided by dreams, attuned to symbols, nourished by creativity. You live in humility before the self, and in compassion toward others. You live as one who knows that the mask is not the truth, but a necessary costume for the dance of life. And when the dance ends, when the final mask falls, you will return to the self from which you came, the whole, authentic, real. To stand at the end of this path is to recognize that the journey beyond the mask is not a one-time event, but an ongoing rhythm of life. Again and again, new masks form, and again they must be shed. Each role you play, each identity you assume, each stage of life places a new persona upon your face. Childhood has its mask, youth another, adulthood still another, even in old age. A mask appears, that of the wise elder, the survivor, the one who knows. Yet if you cling to any of them as absolute, they will eventually shatter. Life itself ensures this, for change is the law of existence. Thus, individuation is not a single unveiling, but a continual cycle of unveiling, a spiral descending into ever greater depths of authenticity. And what of society must one withdraw from it to preserve authenticity? Not necessarily. You are not called to become a hermit unless that is truly your vocation. The challenge is to live within the world without becoming possessed by it, to engage in roles while knowing they are roles, to serve the demands of life while remaining faithful to the self that is the art. It requires vigilance, for the seductions of the collective are strong. The crowd wishes you to forget your soul, to join its noise, to wear its approved masks. But if you remain in dialogue with your dreams, if you attend to the symbols of the unconscious, if you honor your inner life, you can participate in the world without losing yourself to it. The return from the underworld is never easy. Others may not understand. They may sense that you are no longer who you once pretended to be. And this can create fear or resentment. Relationships may shift, some may fall away, but those who can meet you beyond the mask will remain, and with them you will find deeper intimacy, for authenticity attracts authenticity. And even when you are misunderstood, you will carry within you a peace that no external approval can provide. For you will know who you are, not as a mask, but as a soul. Symbols guide you here as well. In many dreams, after individuation has begun, there appear images of marriage or union. A man dreams of marrying a mysterious woman. A woman dreams of uniting with a powerful figure. These are symbols of the inner marriage, the conjunctio of alchemy, where opposites reconcile, where shadow and persona, anima and animus, conscious and unconscious, are joined This union is not perfection. It does not mean you will never suffer again or never fall into conflict, but it means you are no longer at war with yourself. You have made peace with the opposites within, and so you can face the opposites in the outer world with equanimity. At this depth, life becomes symbolic. Every event, every meeting, every loss, every joy speaks with a double voice, outer and inner. A chance encounter may be a message from the self. A loss may be an initiation. A success may be a test. You live not in a flat, meaningless world, but in a cosmos alive with significance. This does not mean you abandon reason. Rather, reason and symbol work together as day and night. To live symbolically is to participate in the mystery, to see that the personal is always also archetypal, that your small story is woven into the great story of humanity and of the cosmos itself. Now, perhaps you ask, what is the ultimate aim of this journey? It is not perfection, nor power, nor even happiness in the superficial sense. The aim is wholeness. To become whole is to embrace your light and your darkness, your strength and your vulnerability, your joy and your suffering. It is to accept that you are human, finite, mortal, and yet also rooted in something infinite and eternal. It is to live the paradox without denying either side. Wholeness is not a static state, but a dynamic balance, a continual movement between opposites, the dance of the soul. When you live in this way, life itself becomes meaningful, for every experience, whether bitter or sweet, contributes to the unfolding of the self. I tell you now a final vision, one that has appeared in countless forms across myths and dreams. Imagine standing in a vast desert, stripped of all possessions, all titles, all masks. The sun burns above you, the earth is barren, and you are utterly alone. At first you despair, for you have nothing left. But then you see a figure approaching on the horizon. As it comes closer, you recognize it as yourself, not the self you thought you were, not the mask, not the ego, but un radiant double, an eternal twin. This figure embraces you, and in that embrace you realize you have never been alone. The self has always been with you, waiting, guiding, watching, and in that moment the desert blossoms. The barren earth blooms with flowers, and you know that you are home. This is the culmination of individuation, the union with the self, the reconciliation of the temporal and the eternal, the discovery of who you truly are when the mask crumbles. Do not think this is beyond you. It is the destiny of every human being. Few embrace it, for it is difficult. It requires courage. It demands sacrifice. But all are called, and those who answer the call, though they suffer, also find a richness of life unknown to those who cling to illusions. Beyond the mask lies the truth. Beyond the mask lies the soul. Beyond the mask lies God Himself, shining through the depths of your being. To reach this is to fulfill the purpose of existence, to become whole, to become real, to become who you truly are. So I leave you with this exhortation. Dare to face the crumbling of your mask. Dare to endure the shadow. Dare to listen to your dreams, to follow the symbols, to walk the path of suffering that leads to transformation. Do not seek escape, but seek truth. And when you find it, live it, even if the world does not understand, for your authenticity will be a light, and though some may fear it, others will be guided by it. In a world of masks, the one who dares to be real is a prophet, a healer, a bringer of new life. May you be such a one.